Leaders of the West, the United States and Russia have been engaged in a war of words. The political shadowboxing has escalated over a possible Russian invasion into Ukraine. The diplomacy aimed at easing tensions now moves to New York. The United Nations Security Council will meet today at the request of the United States to discuss Russia's troop build-up near the Ukrainian border. The United States says the meeting of the 15-member body will give Russia a chance to explain itself and to explain its actions. But Russia has indicated that it could try to block the meeting. 9 votes are needed for the meeting to proceed, and Washington says that it's confident it has enough support. But the UNSC meeting would only see all its members putting out their views openly. The Council will not take any action, even if Russia were to invade Ukraine. A simple statement needs consensus support, and Russia could veto any bid for a resolution. Russia, one of the 5 permanent veto-wielding powers on the Council, along with the US, France, Britain and China, is set to assume the Council's rotating presidency on February the 1st. So what can Russia do as a Security Council president? Well, the role is largely an administrative one. It, however, does involve scheduling meetings, so Russia could delay any attempts by other members to request another discussion on its actions. A discussion on Ukraine is already due on February the 17th. Diplomats say it's a regularly scheduled meeting on the Minsk agreements, which were endorsed by the UNSC in 2015 and designed to end a separatist war in eastern Ukraine. The UN General Assembly is also set to hold an annual discussion on the situation in occupied territories in Ukraine later in February. In case Russia invades Ukraine, analysts say action at the United Nations is likely to mirror what happened in 2014 after Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimea region. The UN Security Council has met several times since then to discuss the Ukraine crisis. In 2014, the Council voted on a US draft resolution opposing a referendum on the status of Crimea and urging countries to not recognise it. It received 13 votes in favour. China abstained, but importantly Russia cast a veto. The West even took a similar text to the 193 member of the UN General Assembly. Now, the UNGA adopted a resolution declaring the referendum invalid. 100 votes were in favour, 11 against and 58 abstentions. 24 countries didn't vote. The General Assembly resolutions carry political weight, but they're not legally binding. Unlike the UN Security Council, no country has veto power in the UN General Assembly. So far, the West's diplomacy at the United Nations over the latest Russian military build-up near Ukraine has largely focused on trying to rally support among UN members by accusing Moscow of undermining the UN Charter. Russia has already denounced the scheduled UNS meet. It's called it a clear PR stunt orchestrated by the United States. Well, for more on this, we can cross live to our WION correspondent, Susan Turani, who's joining us live from New York City. Susan, the UN Security Council is going to be holding this crucial meeting in the next couple of hours at the request of the United States. But what can we expect from the US side? And is the US planning to further build pressure on Russia?
So the United States has been really hyping up this meeting at the United Nations Security Council for the past week, with the UN ambassador going on the Sunday shows here in the United States and saying this is an opportunity for Russia to explain its actions and activities on the Ukrainian border. And while we're open to hearing what Russia has to say, we're not going to sit there and take quote-unquote Russia's propaganda. The problem with that is, these words can only go so far at the United Nations Security Council chamber, because first, as you mentioned, Russia has veto-wielding power. Second of all, Russia will assume the presidency of the United Nations Security Council in the month of February. That's in a day from now. And while this is more of a procedural assumption of power, if you may, it can really call and not call how the meetings move forward. And we did see, you know, as in the case of Crimea back in 2014, that the Security Council, beyond issuing resolutions, really can't go too far. Another issue is that Russia denies that it wants to invade Ukraine. So at this point, it's what the Western powers say against what Russia says. So we'll have to see what happens at the Security Council today. But it is an opportunity for the United States and the West to perhaps have its voice heard. It's maybe take a united stance, something that people have been questioning at this point on whether or not the United States is in line with its European allies against Russia or not, and for the United States and the international community to see where Russia stands in its relations with the West, how it wants to move forward, and with Ukraine more importantly as well. We will hear from Ukraine as well. Let's not forget.
Well, Susan, Russia has already denounced the UN Security Council meeting as a PR stunt orchestrated by the US. Like we said, 9 votes are needed for the meeting to proceed. What are your feelings? Do you think Russia can block it at this stage?
You know, Russia has veto power, even if, no, possibly not, you know, but even if it doesn't, it's not able to block it. The question again remains, and this is not only regarding Russia and Ukraine, the question is what the Security Council at this point can really do, even in a hypothetical scenario, if Russia goes ahead and invades Ukraine, let alone a preemptive meeting like this one where an invasion hasn't taken place. The question right now for many is, what is the point of this Security Council meeting? And unfortunately, you know, that's something that I think many analysts and experts have seen, you know, regarding Burma, Myanmar, Afghanistan even, and that's the fear right now that this might be a platform for the United States and the West to, you know, come out and denounce Russia for a move that it hasn't taken, and for Russia to have the upper hand on the eve of assuming its presidency of the United Nations Security Council. A lot of moving parts right now. We'll know in a few hours, and we'll be at the United Nations when that meeting takes place and post that meeting, and we'll keep you updated. But as for now, you know, the prospects of something grand coming out of this meeting, even a resolution, is pretty grim.